So whenever I walk into here, we got the sign out there that says good people drink good beer. We got plenty of good people around here. That's what we always end the podcast with. Tony, do you want to tell us a little bit about what that means to you?
Yeah, sure. I think everyone knows the quote comes from Hunter S. Thompson, made the quote famous, but it's everything behind our company. Our company wouldn't be here without good people. I reckon we make pretty good beer. And every time you come into this place, you see it on, like you said, Matt, on the fence out the front. You see it on every can of ours. Good people drink good beer. You come in here every week and see good people drinking beer, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, so the good people component is kind of what this kind of podcast is about, is explaining the lads that are behind Revel. And probably one of the things to really talk about for me is the early days and what it meant to be, what we actually put in to get this thing up and running. I think, Flex, you could probably explain it, what it was like in early life.
Yeah, early life was very, very hectic, to say the least. We were probably working 20 hours or so each day in relation to trying to get this thing up and running for the start date. We'd all have our own day jobs, and from there we all kind of stepped up and threw our hat in the ring and turned up here at God knows what types of hours and durations to help each other out and try and finish this thing and get it up and running before the launch date. So that's probably some sort of an essence behind the good people just within our group, that everyone is involved, the nitty-gritties, anything from painting to scraping walls to buying coffees while other people scrape walls or something like that.
Or beers.
Or beers. There was no beers pouring at the moment at that stage. So, but even just a 5-minute drive past, because we all lived in the area, drive past, what are you boys up to? I'll grab you some coffees and then come in and have a chit chat and defrag and then move on with the project and things like that. So, the good side of people really shone from that side. So.
Just looking up at that wall, and I remember we started work at 6 p.m. after a big day at the day job because there was no Revel, there was no income, it couldn't sustain us. We all just had to do it on every little bit that we had left in the other hours of the day. I think Flexi and I were there until like 1:30 a.m. stripping paint and bits of plaster bits off the wall in prep for doing the paint work so the brewery could go in on time. And it was one of 100 tasks that we had going, and there was nothing left in the tanks. And I just looked over at him, and we were both dead dog tired. And then we look over, and there's something happened that was just amazing. And you go, this is why we're doing it. Like, it's coming together. We just have to dig deep and go a little bit further. But if it wasn't for that person beside you, or being able to talk over the fence to Mark and say, I need to talk, it's all falling apart, it never would have got off the ground. Yeah. And that's why when we heard that good people drink good beer, it resonated so much. And it's why it's on our wall, it's why it's on our cans. And I think if you continue to do that and you look after your people and we all invest good positive energy into it, good things are going to come from it. That's why the beers taste so fucking awesome.
And when you're in that mode too, and you've got, like you said, 100 things on the list, I bet scraping paint off walls didn't probably actually rank that high in the moment. Like that micro task of doing that seems minuscule, but it's just, we have to do it.
Yeah, and especially when you don't know how to scrape paint off the walls properly. Like we were learning everything.
Yeah.
Everything was a new lesson. It was fresh. We'd not done this before, but the cool thing was leaning over to people, and Dave, this is a good probably segue to when you hit a roadblock and you go, oh crap, I don't know how to do that. There was 5 other people behind me that probably had some kind of idea or knew someone that did. And a great example of that is what dropped on us just after or just before we started building.
Yeah. So I guess probably one of the things that we probably haven't shared as a brewery too much is a development application sort of process that we went through. It was long and drawn out. We were 18 months trying to push through getting a development application to open up our brewery. And then just as we thought we were about to get an approval, the conditions for the approval limited us on how much we were actually allowed to produce per annum. Most small breweries in similar sort of areas to us are allowed 200,000 litres per annum in accordance with the regulators' guidelines. And just at the 11th hour of us getting our approval, we had it cut back to 60,000 with no understanding on why or anything like that. So to put that in context, that's like 3-4 months worth of beer producing for us. We opened the doors, we started our business with something that was unsustainable.
It was doomed to fail. It was that phone call was, so this is fascinating. You've been talking to us for about 18 months and we've never mentioned this, but we're going to give you approval to open, but you're only allowed to produce a quarter of the beer that you're going to need for the year. I was like, oh, really? So we're going to go bankrupt within 3 months. Because after 3 months, we won't be able to produce any more beer. So how are we going to be a viable business? That same week, we were literally signing the lease, the 5-year lease for real estate on Oxford Street in Bulimba, which is not cheap. And we'd also negotiated with our head brewer, Matthew Cuthbert, for him to pick up his entire life and move to Queensland from New South Wales with his beautiful fiancée. And it was a body shot. It was an absolute body shot. And for me, I had no idea. Like, I just got a phone call and an email, and I had no idea what this meant. And I was like, wow, this thing is pretty much going to just unravel. One phone call to Dave. I said, Dave, this sounds like a approval problem. It smells like an emissions issue. Would you and your expertise be able to unpack this issue and sort it out? And
so I guess I jumped in and had a look at our development application and sat down with Mark and went through exactly what we'd proposed to council and how council had assessed our development. And we started to realise that on no fault of councils, they're under time stresses and everything else, just like the rest of us.
Yep.
They didn't fully understand what a small brewery is. They're used to looking at the big multinational-owned breweries across the river. They're used to the big industrial sort of facilities. So Mark and I sort of stripped it back down, tried to put a little bit more educational sort of piece into a reapplication to council. And we just explained that it's a small brewery. There are emissions, but we've got controls to try and manage that. Our kettle has a condensing unit on it to try and reduce emissions and recapture those before sending them out. We manage when and how often we brew. Any of our emissions from our fermenters are...
So what we said to them in technical terms is, it's quite a pleasant smell and it smells like porridge.
And there we go, we got approval. 200,000 litres, just like that.
Who doesn't like porridge?
But I was in here last week and I was like, I was in there on a brew day for the first time ever. Man, it smells like a bakery first thing in the morning. It's amazing.
So good.
Biscuits and porridge.
Yeah.
It's delicious. But I think, in Dave's articulating, is that by no fault of the regulatory, there was a lack of understanding there. And then, so by all the whole team here just rallied and got behind it. And we have 2 engineers that just knocked it out of the park, created that common understanding, and we got our approvals. But something really kind of beautiful happened at the end of that. And fast forwarding a little bit, we opened the doors. 3 months later, we got the approvals that Dave, and Mark worked for. So we saw an opportunity to have a conversation with the government, and we took it. One of the bits of feedback we gave them, and we're sitting around the table with like 8 other breweries from Queensland. They all shared a very similar story, and it wasn't an aggressive one or an angry one. It was, hey, we went through some struggles that nearly sunk our company, but when we created common understanding, everything was all fine. So that conversation over a dinner and a pairing of food and really great independent craft beer in Queensland turned into something that got legs on its own. It got driven by the IBA, the Independent Brewers Association chapter in Queensland. And what eventuated was Queensland government creating a craft beer strategy for growth in Queensland. And one of the key outcomes for that was creating better understanding in the regulatory authorities about what small independent breweries are and what they're definitely not. So you don't apply an oil refinery kind of template to something that's more comparable to a bakery that smells like porridge in the morning when it's doing its thing. And that was a really, really great outcome. And for us, and me personally, I think starting a business and going through all those problems and then watching that turn into something so fruitful that will help all of the other great breweries that are currently out there and expanding and the ones that are up and coming, as that comes to fruition and those outcomes get actioned, I think it's going to be an amazing thing. It's really awesome to be part of that.
So it's definitely a case of rising tides lifting all ships in this scenario.
Absolutely.
That is a fantastic analogy.
There's a ship up there. I was
there
thinking
is.
about
The old shipwright.
So I guess from being around you guys a little bit now, being around the brewery and listening to what you guys are talking about here, there's real like economical challenges in actually opening up a brewery. I mean, the idea is amazing. The idea is great. When everyone speaks about craft beer, it's in such good light, but it seems like actually taking that plan and making that work has very real economical challenges. Yeah,
definitely. As we've all said, we heard beer and pizza and thought, great, let's throw all the money we don't have at it and it'll just work out. But it's not quite that easy. I remember there was at the very, very start, this brewery we're sitting in now was an empty husk of a furniture store. And we were sitting in the old office on the benches. And Jay said to us, he said, I don't know if we can afford the pizza oven. And we were like looking at him going, you said beer and pizza.
But I don't think we can afford it.
and like that's literally how it started was, could we have a pizza oven or not? That's how down to the wire it got.
Well, I think just adding to that though, we'd actually bought the pizza oven.
Yeah.
Jay was saying we might need to sell it in order to try and get this brewery up and running. That's how close the economics were at the start.